I'm going to tell you some things this evening that you have not heard before on any mainstream media outlet. And there's a reason for it, and you'll find out what that reason is when I get done with everything I'm going to tell you. But I want to go over first the biggest lies that the President told to push this legislation down our throats on Christmas Eve on a purely partisan basis without one Republican vote. It was done at 2 in the morning, and they used the reconciliation bill, which was supposed to be a budget reconciliation bill. And in the rules of the reconciliation bill, if you pull it up online, it states very clearly that you cannot pass a piece of legislation without it reducing our deficit, right? Or that it be deficit neutral. Well, unfortunately, the Democrat Party knew, according to the CBO assessments, that the Obamacare legislation would add on to our deficit hundreds of billions of dollars. So it was not a hidden secret. It was very public, and many policy wonks like myself knew this. They disregarded that information, and they used the reconciliation bill illegally to pass this legislation. Why did they have to use the reconciliation bill? You remember, before Obamacare passed, there was an uproar in the Tea Party to elect a man named Scott Brown from Massachusetts. Since we elected him, he's been a terrible disappointment, his voting record. But he was the 41st vote to stop Obamacare. And so when we got him elected, it was a great day. Everybody thought, well, this is it, we're going to stop it, right? Unfortunately, that didn't happen because then they decided to deem it passed. Remember that? They wanted to use the Louise Slaughter rule after Louise Slaughter. And that would basically send it over to the Senate and you just assume that it's passed without the necessary votes to pass it. And thank God, one man and his legal firm stopped it from happening. And his name is Mark Levin. And Mark Levin owns the Landmark Legal Foundation, and his 4 attorneys who worked through holidays and weekends to stop this tyrannical legislation actually stopped the slaughter rule. And that's a good thing. But it didn't stop its kill. Then they decided to use the reconciliation bill. They ignored the fact that it would add hundreds of billions of dollars to our deficit, and they shoved it down our throats while most of you were either sleeping or still wrapping Christmas presents on Christmas Eve. So, the question is, how did they convince the American public, not those of us in this room, at least not most of us in this room, but how did they convince the rest of the country that this was something we needed to do? That health care reform, remember, it started as health care reform, and then it wasn't polling very well when you demonized the hospitals and doctors. So they switched it to what? Health insurance reform. And that started polling much better, because everyone's either had a claim denied or had a problem with an insurance company, so that seemed to poll much better. So they called it health insurance reform. But they used 5 lies to make sure that enough Americans decided to believe that the President was right in his action. And I'm going to go over those with you this evening. The first is, and you remember this number was climbing higher and higher before Obamacare passed, the number of American uninsureds. And they used bigger and bigger numbers as we got closer to March 23rd, 2010, when the legislation passed. At first, it started off at about 40 million. And then it was 45 million. Then it was 47 million. Then it was 50 million. And that became the consensus of the number of American uninsured in this country. Then, out of left field, which of course is where he would normally come from, Anthony Weiner said, there's 100 million people in America without health insurance. No one knows where he got that number from. But it all of a sudden doubled. And then they took a Harvard study, they twisted the results of the Harvard study, and said that there are 45,000 people, quote, dying in the streets because they don't have health insurance. Completely ignoring a law that was passed in the 1980s that states that if you are in an emergency situation, you're within 500 feet of any emergency room in this nation, they have to treat you, and the taxpayer foots the bill. So, what no one asked is, let's say there's 50 million people. Let's agree. Okay? Who are these people? Who comprise the 50 million? No one seemed to ask Nancy Pelosi that or any of the other legislators. Who are these people? So the U.S. Census Bureau decided to tell us who they actually are. And here's what we found out from the U.S. Census Bureau. We found out that half of the 50 million uninsured are temporarily uninsured for an average of 4 months. Does that sound like a chronically uninsured situation? You know who those people are? Those people are, I have a job with my employer, right? I've lost that job. I'm I'm now looking for another job that has more employer-sponsored health insurance. I found that job. Within 4 months, I'm now insured again. So we take 50 and cut it in half to 25 million, because 4 months is not a chronically uninsured situation, and taxpayers should not be paying $2.6 trillion, which is now the cost we know Obamacare will cost us, to insure people who are uninsured for 4 months. So now we're down to 25 million. Who were the 25 million? Thanks to the U.S. Census Bureau, we find out that 38% of the 25 million can afford to purchase health insurance, but they choose not to do so. 17 million make more than $50,000 a year, and 9 million make $75,000 a year. Now, is $75,000 a year indigent? Poor. Should the taxpayer be footing the bill for people making $75,000 a year for their health insurance? No, we should not, especially when we're $16 trillion in debt and we have a $1 trillion annual deficit, thanks to Barack Obama. So if that's the case, once we whittle down all the numbers, we now find out the real number of uninsured. What did I mention? I almost forgot. You know, they said it's American uninsured. 12 million of them are illegal. So the real number of uninsured, from Anthony Weir's 100 million to the overall consensus of 50 million, is actually 10 million uninsured. Now, do you think it's possible, just possible, that we can insure 10 million people for less than $2.6 trillion? I guarantee you that we could. Worse yet, we can do it for nothing. In 2010, Time Magazine published an article on the front page talking about the amount of waste we have in the American healthcare system. And the number in 2010 was $680 billion a year. That's the amount of fraud and waste in the American healthcare system. If we asked our legislators in Washington, D.C. to just be half competent, not 100% competent, because we know that's not achievable. Let's just say half competent, and we cut half of the $680 billion. That half would allow us to insure 100 million Americans with a gold-plated health insurance plan that will make the CEOs of Blue Cross Blue Shield green with envy for the rest of their lives. They could do it without spending a dime. So that's the first lie the president told.
Why hasn't this been done? Why didn't anybody do this before?
Democrats control Congress for 2 years.
Yeah, but how about when the Republicans had control of Congress?
Actually, the Republicans under Bush passed some great legislation. I'll get into what they did. But they didn't go far enough. They're not perfect, as you know. Most Republicans aren't perfect. Actually, most Republicans are rhinos. But there are some good ones. Rhino meaning Republican in name only. But there are some very good ones. And there's some great legislation pending. And in fact, the Republican Party has passed over 30 pro-growth, pro-healthcare reform, pro-health insurance reform, job creation bills over to the Senate. And when the president says they're shutting down government, he's referring to one man. And that man is Harry Reid, who controls the U.S. Senate. So those bills are piled up in Reid's office, and no one's even looking at them, because he doesn't want those to go through. He wants his own legislation to go through. We have a Congress that hasn't passed a budget in over 2,000 days. It's one of the foremost obligations our representatives have, is just to balance the budget. Instead, every 6 months, what do we have? A continuing resolution, and another continuing resolution. And we keep spending and spending without balancing the budget. The president, though, has improved in one way. President Barack Obama has actually improved in one way. I know it's strange that I'm saying this, but he has. He did one thing better than he did before. His first budget that he proposed to be passed through the Senate failed by being voted down 97-0 in the Democrat-controlled Senate. Well, he improved that score with his last budget, which was voted down by a Democrat-controlled Senate by 99-0. So he's getting better. The second biggest lie that the president told was, we have to pass this bill, back that up, I lost it. We have to pass this bill in order to lower premiums by $2,500 a year for a family of 4. Who remembers that? Right? $2,500 was the average. I want you to know what he means by lowering premiums by $2,500. Okay? In the last 17 years, I've been insuring Americans across the United States. On individual health insurance plans, which is a family plan, a bad year for those people in the last 17 years was 15% increase, which means they lived in a zip code demographic where there were a lot of claims for that insurance company, or they have had a lot of claims themselves, and their renewal rates were high at 15%. And I would get panic phone calls to shop for new rates. Small and large group clients of mine, a bad year for them was 8 to 10%. That's a bad year. Okay? I'm going to share with you from the lowest to the highest of the health insurance premium increases I've gotten just for Blue Cross for my clients since 9/23/2010. Wait a minute, Steve. Obamacare passed 3/23/2010. Why is it 9/23/2010? I'll tell you in a minute. I'm going to go from lowest to highest. Right? The lowest premium increase thus far is 30.17%. That's a one-year annual renewal rate. The second is 31.35%. The third is 35.63%. And the last is 44.78%. These are the highest health insurance increases I have seen in 17 years. And there's a reason for it. The reason for it is, let's go back to 9/23/2010. 6 months after the legislation passed, the most onerous part of Obamacare, in my opinion, coming from my industry, is the medical loss ratios. Has anybody heard of the medical loss ratios, MLRs? The medical loss ratios, you listen guys, you've seen this before. The medical loss ratios state that if you are a health insurance company in the United States and you underwrite more than 50 people, you must reduce your operating margin, not your profit margin, your total operating margin down to less than 15%. Now, the bigger carriers would run at about 20 to 25%. The smaller carriers, they have to reduce theirs to 20%. They run closer to a 30% operating margin. And when they announced this in 9/23/2010, the insurance companies, all carriers in the United States, had to comply by January 1st, 2011. So one of the first things Humana did was fire 4,000 employees. Since this medical loss ratio has been implemented, we have lost 20 health insurance companies in this country. They have either folded, been gobbled up by bigger carriers, and something happens to individuals or business owners or their employees when their health insurance company goes out of business because of the president's health care law. Which brings me to the third biggest line the president told. If you like your plan, you can keep your plan, and no one will take it away from you, period, end quote. Who remembers that promise? When your health insurance company goes out of business, miraculously, you lose your health insurance coverage. It's just a causal effect. So I want you to know what happens to the average American, one of our neighbors, right here in Naperville, Illinois. Obviously, I'm not in Naperville, but close to Dixon, not far from here. 11 years ago, I met with them, and I discussed with them an HSA qualifying health insurance plan, or a consumer-driven tax qualifying plan. And the reason I discussed that is because they had heard of a senator named Bill Archer out of Texas. Bill Archer designed the world's first medical IRA. And it was a brilliant idea. And what Archer was commissioned to do was approach the health insurance industry and ask them to do something to lower premiums, because premiums were just getting too high. This is in the early 90s. And the insurance industry didn't take long to respond. The response was, kill the copay. Kill the copay. And Archer said, what do you mean kill the copay? They said, if the policyholder has a $10 copay for all services rendered, there is no correlation between the policyholder and the actual cost of health care, because everything for them is only $10. So what it would do is encourage overuse of policies, and it would completely detach the policyholder with the real cost of health care. So they said kill the copay and kill the individual deductibles. Instead of a family of 3 all having to worry about satisfying a deductible of their own if they end up in the hospital, give them one deductible for the entire family to share. Make it aggregate. And after the aggregate deductible is satisfied, all family members, the rest of their claims for the year, are covered at 100%. We want you to cover them up to $8 million per family member. Just by making those 2 changes, the insurance industry was able to lower premiums for a family of 4 by an average of $200 a month. So as soon as they saw the numbers come back and the premiums were that low, Archer said, give them a place to put that money. Provide them an impetus to save that money. Because now it's not going to the insurance company, it's theirs to keep. So was devised the world's first medical IRA. Today, we call medical IRAs health savings accounts, or HSA. And what they do is they allow you to give money that you would give to an insurance company for a low deductible, low copay plan, and pay yourself each month. So this is what this family did. And they did this for 11 years. And 11 years later, they were sitting at over $50,000 in their HSA account. Money to be used for future expenses. Because the great thing about medical IRAs is that, one, if you don't use it, you don't lose it. Unlike an FSA, flexible spending account. The HSA, it rolls over every year. So they had very little claims. They were a very healthy, active family. Over $50,000 tax deferred, they could pull from it whenever they wanted with no early withdrawal penalties. And any expenses they spend as long as it's on the IRS list becomes 100% tax deductible. So now their kids' braces are 100% tax deductible, and many other things. They didn't have a lot of claims. On that same year, she was stricken with infiltrating ductal carcinoma, which is the worst kind of breast cancer a woman can be struck with. Now, she knew 11 years ago she did something right. She bought an HSA qualified plan, and she saved the money instead of spent the money she was paying the insurance company. So she knew she could at least control her health care costs. And she knew the maximum risk to her family. They chose a $5,000 deductible for the whole family. It will be $5,000 a year, providing she stays within the nationwide PPO network. So she did. Everything was fine for about 6 months. And then the president's health care law passed. 6 months after that, the medical loss ratios went into place. Less than 3 months after that, her health insurance company went out of business. I'm going to read to you the letter that they sent to her. This is from Guaranty Trust Life Insurance Company, one of the 20 carriers we've lost. Are you hearing about any of this on the mainstream anywhere? No. It's one of the many reasons that you've not had a health insurance expert on any media outlet, anywhere, until March of this year when I was on Fox News. Other than that, not a peep. Now,
I think MSM has had somebody on there talking from the insurance companies before. I don't remember the man's name. He used to work with the insurance companies. They did have somebody, I can't remember.
Wendell Potter?
That sounds pretty good. That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, he's pro Obamacare.
Golden Rule initiated about 15, 20 years ago.
You know Golden Rule, which is now owned by United Healthcare? They had a truck out in front of the Capitol building with free Obamacare checkups. You know, because the insurance industry was what? My God, 45 million people are going to have to buy our product under penalty of law. This is going to give a windfall profit for us. This is great. Imagine making the better widget in your garage, but you have no marketing budget. You can't get on TV, right? Then some knucklehead in Washington says they need to buy your widget under penalty of law. You think your sales would go up? Well, this is what the insurance industry was saying. My God, this is going to be fantastic. And better yet, they're discussing putting you in jail if you don't buy health insurance. Who remembers that? Remember? And then they had a journalist that was in front of Edith, the dingbat Pelosi. That's what I call her. Yeah, the actually kind of with Edith. So one of the journalists decided to commit a random act of journalism and ask a real question. And they asked her, Ms. Pelosi, is it true that you're going to put us in jail in America? We don't buy health insurance? You're kidding. And of course, she ended on when he asked the question. Well, here's the problem. And we'll get back to this, which took me off the topic, but it's a good topic and a good place to go. Just before it passed, the Tea Party rose up all across the nation and said there's no way in a free country you're going to force us to buy a private product from a private citizen or put us in jail. So we want those criminal penalties out. So what they're going to do is not write a new law. No. They're just going to take the code in the IRS section that says we don't pay your taxes. Fines will accrue. Over 5 years, if you still don't pay, you become less than snipes. And you do go to jail. So they were going to take that out of the IRS code and flop it into Obamacare, because Obamacare had all been written. 3 months later, before it passes, we rose up. It was pulled. Very little fanfare, which presented a very unique problem to our statist-in-chief, Barack Obama, because now he can no longer force you under penalty of law to buy health insurance. So you had to think for a few minutes, what am I going to do? How am I going to force you if you decide to say, I don't want to buy health insurance, I refuse, I'm a free citizen. So he decided to commission the Internal Revenue Service. That's right. So now the IRS will be coming after you if you don't buy health insurance, right? But if they took the criminal penalties out, what's the IRS really going to do? You see, the fine in 2014 is $95. That's how much it is if you refuse to buy health insurance. By 2016, it graduates to $695, which is still a fraction of the cost of buying a government-approved health insurance plan, even if you're a single person, right? Do you remember when George Snuffleupagus was sitting down with Obama on ABC News, and he asked Obama the question about, actually pull out the dictionary, pull it out, show the president. This is what a tax is, but you say what you're doing is a fine, but it's not a tax, right? And the president's response was what? I reject that definition. Only Barack Obama people reject the definition of something in the dictionary. The reason he had to reject the definition is because his endless chaser attorneys would be arguing that it is a tax only a few short months later in the U.S. Supreme Court. So let me ask you a question. If the criminal fines are gone, right, and you refuse to comply, and they can't come after you legally, right, and the only thing the president is commissioning the IRS to do is to hold your tax refund, right, hold your tax refund. How many people on a percentage basis in this nation actually pay income taxes? Would it be fair to assume around 50% or so? So how do you hold a tax refund from someone who pays no taxes? So who's really going to be paying for all of this? Those of us who already pay taxes. The few, proud of 53%. This is not rocket science. Back to the story. Guarantee Trust Life Insurance Company, one of the 20 that went out of business, sent her this letter. Remember, 11 years ago, what did she do? Bought a plan with a $5,000 deductible for the whole family, 100% coverage afterward, and saved all that money. Here's a letter. Notice of termination of your insurance coverage. The purpose of this letter is to provide you with important information regarding your major medical coverage with Guarantee Trust Life Insurance Company. The letter is intended to provide notice of an action Guarantee Trust will be taking that will result in the termination of all major medical plans in your state. Will I be offered a replacement plan? Yes, we are required by law in the terms of your specific policy to offer you replacement coverage. The replacement plan will be a high deductible major medical plan. A high deductible major medical plan is a type of plan that doesn't begin to pay for covered charges until such charges exceed your new deductible, ready? $25,000 per person. $25,000 per person. This only happened because of the President's health care law. Now you have a woman calling my office in tears because she already has to visit with all her oncologists, MRI, CT scans for invasive cancer treatment, and she loses her health insurance plan. And I have to put her on her state risk pool. What's the state risk pool? Oh, that brings me to the President's fourth biggest lie. The President stated that we have to pass this bill to solve what? Pre-existing conditions. Right? Pre-existing conditions. This is what we have to do. We have to pass it to fix it. I want you to remember this statement if you remember nothing else this evening. Congress created pre-existing conditions. Not the insurance industry, not evil health insurance brokers like me. Congress created pre-existing conditions. And they did it in 1996, when HIPAA law was written. Who has heard of HIPAA law? When you hear of HIPAA law, what is the only thing that comes to your mind? Secrecy. Privacy. Yeah. Sadly, most people don't know that there's a far more important clause in HIPAA law, and that is portability. In fact, HIPAA stands for Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. Privacy is not in the acronym. Portability is the most important part of HIPAA law, written in 1986. It protects 90% of the American insured in this country against pre-existing conditions, and it's done so for 16 going on 17 years. How do I know, and how do you already know this? Have any of you ever been in a position, at a new position of employment, sitting in front of your prospective boss, and he starts asking you about what medications you take? If you're overweight, how much do you weigh? Does your family have a history of heart disease? Do you smoke? Anyone ever had by a show of hands? No. Why not? Because it's been illegal for 16 years to discriminate against 90% of the American insured against pre-existing conditions. When they wrote HIPAA portability law, they left a very important part out. You see, if you have a group health insurance plan, if you're an employer, and you hold that job for at least 18 months, and with it your health insurance, if you lose that job, HIPAA portability law states that if you find another job within 63 days of the loss of your first job, your new employer is obligated under federal law to cover all of your pre-existing conditions from day one. Which is why when you lose your job, they must provide you with what? A certificate of creditable coverage that shows the new employer's group plan that I had coverage here for at least 18 months. You're obligated under federal law to cover my pre-existing conditions. That law has protected 90% of the American insured for 16 years before Obamacare was ever thought of. Where they dropped the ball and created pre-existing conditions is when they didn't extend that portability to individual policyholders. These people should have more protection for pre-existing conditions, not less. Who are these 14 million Americans? These are the self-employed entrepreneurs. They do not have 500 employees at the local Motorola outlet where they can negotiate prices with insurance carriers. It's just them and maybe their wife. So they can be denied coverage for pre-existing conditions because they're too heavy, because they smoke too much, because they have 3 medications, because they have cancer, whatever it may be. And the only reason that is because of Congress. How do you solve pre-existing conditions? You add one sentence to existing affordability law. It states the following: all individual plans are now protected under existing affordability law. And you have solved pre-existing conditions for the rest of our country. They no longer exist. Does that take 2,400 pages? Does it take 1 page? It takes 1 sentence. Now, Barack Obama also said that if you are denied coverage for health insurance, you are, quote, left with no options, which is why we need my plan. In reality, when Congress dropped the ball, extended no portability to individual policyholders, the states exercised their sovereign rights and opened what's called state high-risk health insurance pools. In Illinois, we call it ICHIP. ICHIP is an acronym that stands for the Illinois Comprehensive Health Insurance Plan. It is a place for 16 years in the state of Illinois, even longer in our case, where individuals with pre-existing conditions can go and get coverage for their pre-existing conditions with no questions asked. And you will carry in Illinois and many states a Blue Cross Blue Shield card. Which is why, for the last 17 years, I have never not been able to offer someone health insurance, even if they were dying of cancer. I had a client in Naperville who had a brain tumor, literally die in the hospital, and I put her on her ICHIP program. Her husband helped fill out the forms. And ICHIP paid the rest of her bills, and sadly, then she did pass away. This is not just in Illinois. 35 states had high-risk health insurance pools for individuals with pre-existing conditions for 16 years before Obamacare. In the other states, you see, America is beautiful because it has 50 beautiful laboratories, or 57 if you're Barack Obama. And in these laboratories, you can experiment and do amazing things. You can also really do stupid things, which is what Blago did. I'll get to Blago here in a minute. But before Obamacare, the state of Ohio and 9 other states, instead of having state high-risk health insurance pools, and how are those risk pools funded? The state insurance commissioner in Illinois and these other 34 states for high-risk pools state that if you're going to come in our state, you're going to offer health insurance to our state residents, you need to take a percentage of your profits and put it to a pool, or you will not sell health insurance in Illinois. And that pool will be for people who do not qualify for your products because they're too sick, too heavy, too many conditions. Okay? The other 10 states decided not to operate a high-risk health insurance pool, but instead to issue a guaranteed issue individual mandate. Listen to this. I'll start with Ohio. In Ohio, the insurance commissioner says to all 20 companies operating in Illinois, if you want to sell health insurance in Ohio, you must open your underwriting books 1 30-day period, once a year, every year, and it's usually in March. Which means that you must issue 4% of your block of business every year to anybody, regardless of how sick they are. That 30-day period. So everybody in Ohio knows during the 30-day period once a year, they can all come and every carrier has to issue 4% of their block of business to sick people. If United Healthcare, which is the biggest carrier in the nation, fills up their 4% quota for sick people in Ohio, they literally have to refer those people to their nearest competitor, which in this case would be Humana. Humana must also issue 4% of their block of business to sick people, and so on, and so on, and so on. And did you know that never in Ohio's history have they ever not filled out all 4% for every company? Not even close. Now that's a great idea. We could have taken that concept and spread that across the country. We didn't. Here's what we did. We took Obamacare. Let me tell you a little bit about Obamacare. Blago got a bunch of money from the federal government under the federal S-chip bill. Who remembers the federal S-chip bill? The federal S-chip bill was passed under President George W. Bush. And it was agreed upon that children of the truly indigent, the truly poor, should get free health insurance. It should be subsidized by the taxpayer. And both parties agreed. So we passed S-chip and we funded it with billions of dollars. That money was block granted to the states, and the states opened what we in Illinois first called Kid Care. Today it's called All Kids Covered. Now, when it was Kid Care, it only offered health insurance to children of the poor, which is what the intent of the bill was designed to do. Then, what happened? As Democrats and rhino Republicans often do when they get money, they like to spend it. And they spend it to pander for votes. So Blago did. Blago said, now, I'm in Illinois, and Chicago is a sanctuary city, where illegals can come to our city, wear their Che Guevara signs, and they can't be deported, right? So I'm going to open up our All Kids Covered program and design 2 new programs illegally by myself, kind of like the president, right? How many times have you heard the president say, "Can't get Congress to get this done, I'm just going to have to act by myself"? What? Blago is the same way. Blago decided to expand the All Kids Covered program, which at the time was called Kid Care, to do 2 new programs: Moms and Babies and Family Care. Let me tell you about moms and babies. If you are on your 6th child, okay, and you're about to pop, and you don't know where Papa is, you can go to the state, and the taxpayer will pay for that child every time it happens. That wasn't good enough for Blago. Blago still felt he was missing some votes. So he decided to start Family Care. Now, father of the child gets free health insurance too. And did you know both those programs are still operating under Patio Queen? And did you know that we are currently looking at a $21 to $23 billion outstanding Medicaid debt? I'm not talking about our public pensions. I'm just talking about our Medicaid debt. Why? Why? Why did he do it? Because he wanted to pander for votes by offering free stuff. Nothing's free. You're all paying for it. You wonder why your 67% tax increase just took place? That's why. And one of our Chicago Sun-Times reporters decided to commit another act of journalism and decided to figure out how many on the Illinois Medicaid system are Americans, are here illegally. So they did their own actuarial assessment. Who would like to guess the percentage of people on our Illinois Medicaid system still there today who are not legal residents of this nation? 75%. Do you know the number? 77,000. Do you know that no Republicans in Illinois, none in our House and none in our Senate, are even proposing any legislation to remove the 77,000? And yet, Tom Cross, our House Minority Leader, decided to tell us, number one, he made one of the dumbest statements I've ever heard in my life, to a DJ in Bloomington, Illinois, when he said that we did not pass Obamacare in Illinois 2 years early, but if the Supreme Court strikes down Obamacare, then what we did is over. What does the Supreme Court's decision on Obamacare have to do with you did if it isn't Obamacare? That was an actual statement he made. And yes, they brought Obamacare into Illinois 2 years early because they're desperate for the matching funds from the federal government. So, 77,000, and now we have children of American citizens who are truly indigent, who the bill was designed to help, who can't get access to specialist care or expensive medication because 77,000 illegals are ahead of them on our Medicaid system. And our Illinois Republicans, the 15 rhinos who helped the Democrats pass this Medicaid reform bill, there's nothing in the Medicaid reform bill that asks the questions that if you are an American citizen. Nothing. And they taught the establishment of the TPA. They're so happy. Oh yeah, we have a TPA, third-party administrator. Every other state has had a third-party administrator for years. The third-party administrator, all it does is once a year sends you a notice. Hi, it's Illinois Medicaid. Are you dead? You're not dead? Are you still living in Illinois? You're not? Then you're off our program. But it doesn't ask the most important question. Are you a legal resident of the United States? We had a pharmacist from Kentucky give a testimony in our house in Illinois just recently. Said some of her best customers are Illinois Medicaid recipients from Kentucky. It's insanity what we've allowed to happen in the state of Illinois and now at the federal level. And what Blago did, the president is now doing nationwide. You see, Blago redefined the term poor. You see, he took the eligibility level, which is the current federal poverty level, and jacked it up 140% higher. So people making much more than poverty level could get in our Illinois Medicaid system. The president has done the same thing. He jacks up the eligibility to get on Medicaid to 138% above the existing federal poverty level, and for a family of four, 400% higher, which means a family of four can now, making $89,000 a year, can get on Medicaid, courtesy of the few, the proud, the 53% of us who actually pay income taxes, which is why the law will bankrupt the states. Now, why is health insurance so expensive? I get this question all the time. Why is health insurance? Oh, before you get to that, I just want to touch one more thing on the big issues. On the president's side, who remembers the joint session of Congress where he had everybody in the chamber, and he told them about a man from Downers Grove, Illinois, who had his health insurance cover canceled, this is a quote, his treatment delayed, and end quote, he died because of it. Who remembers that? Okay. The Chicago Tribune decided to commit another, what? Random act of journalism. They decided to see, is the president telling the truth? Did this really happen? Because he loves to say they can drop your plan when you get sick. That was the biggest lie he told. Think about it. Just think about it. I don't have to get into the law, and I will. Who in their right mind would buy health insurance if they can drop your coverage when you get sick? I would pay another premium to any carrier if they could drop my coverage when I get sick. Just think about it. It's just logical. It's been illegal since the 1980s to do that unless you commit fraud. And you are convicted of that fraud. That's the only time they can drop your coverage. And it's called rescission. So the president's law didn't fix that. It just simply extended an existing law that protected people against plans dropping their coverage when they get sick. It's been illegal for 20 years.
More than that.
More than that.
Oh, yeah.
Now, the president said, let's go with the quote again. Had his coverage canceled, his treatment delayed, and he died because of it. Tribune decided to find Mr. Otto Raditz. What's his name? The only true story is that he lived in Downers Grove. The reality is, his sister, when Assurant Health Insurance Company in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, decided to send him a letter because he was filing cancer claims right after he bought his plan. And they said, boy, you're filing claims awful quick. You just bought the plan. We're going to do some investigation to see if maybe you didn't tell us the truth on your application, which is called what? Fraud. Okay? Turns out he didn't tell the truth. And he had a condition that had the insurance company know, they wouldn't have given him health insurance. So when you commit insurance fraud, the insurance company has a legal right under a law that's far longer than 20 years old to rescind your coverage, which just means that we're returning you back to where we found you. You were uninsured when you met us. You're going to be uninsured again. We're going to give you back all the money you gave us. So that's what they considered doing. They sent him a letter stating, we're considering rescinding your coverage because you didn't tell us the truth. Mr. Wright's sister called the Department of Insurance. They called the Attorney General's office. They called Assured Health Insurance Company in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Here's how the conversation went. We know you're under your legal rights to terminate his coverage. Please don't do it. He needs a $200,000 bone marrow transplant to save his life. Want to know the real story? The truth is, Assured Health Insurance Company never canceled his coverage, paid his claims for 4 more years, and then he died. The president is a liar. Worse than that, he's lying again right now. And he's using one of my favorite actors to lie to us. Tom Hanks. I love Tom Hanks. With the Wilson Ball, and I just love the guy. Forrest Gump, he's an American legend. And yeah, right, he's a legend. He's in a new DVD from Barack Obama called The Road We've Traveled. Off a cliff. He narrates the DVD, and in it he repeats a lie the president told about his own mother. Who lies about their mother, let alone their mother's pre-existing conditions, which she didn't have? It turns out another random act of journalism was committed, and they decided to dig in to this true story about Barack Obama's mother being denied coverage for pre-existing condition on her health insurance plan. It turns out the true story is she never had health insurance. It was a disability policy. And every time I tell that story, there's a random liberal somewhere in the audience who goes, Mr. Tucker, the president is very busy. He's got foreign policy, he's got a lot of things he's got to do, we're all moving forward, how could he possibly know these minute details? And my answer is always the same. Do you know who the attorney was that represented Barack Obama's mother in this disability claim? It was a tall guy with big ears with a penchant for lying, Barack Obama. So there's no way he doesn't know he's lying to you. The president is a liar. Lastly, why is health insurance so expensive? Two things. Barack Obama will tell you it's the evil health insurance companies. They like to rake you over the coals with the premiums. They like to drop your coverage when you're sick, all these lies. The reality is, if you go back to 1979, there were a total of 279 mandates, federal and state mandates, placed upon health insurance companies in this nation, nationwide. The mandates were all for medically necessary things. For instance, if you come into our state, you must cover cancer. Okay, we'll cover cancer. That's medically necessary. You must cover all these other conditions that are medically necessary, right? Insurance company agrees, they can now sell in that state. Total, in '79, we had 279 mandates imposed on health insurance companies in this nation. Who would like to guess how many we have now post-Obamacare? Anyone? It's 4279. It's actually 2,316. That's right. That seems like a big number. I brought them with me to see them all. There they all are. See that? This is why health insurance is so expensive, because of all these mandates, 2,316. Let me just share with you what they are, okay? Let's start with hair prosthesis. Why are haircuts a mandated expense? And if we pay for vitamins, we got ripped off. Next, infertility. Did you know you pay about 30% more in Illinois for infertility coverage? Even if you don't have the proper plumbing, but when you're able to have a child, you get to pay more for infertility. Let's keep going down the list. One of my favorites, I can read them all to you. You can find them at truthaboutobamacare.com where you're going to find all this information. One of my favorites is the University of California campuses in the land of fruit and nuts. That's right. All 4 UC campuses, including UC Berkeley. Guess what their health insurance covers? Surgery to turn your Audi into an innie. I don't mean your belly button. That's right. Sexual reassignment surgery. Do you know how expensive that is? Is that medically necessary? No. But they all get to pay more because of it. And you know what happens to an insurance company when a liberal piece of legislation is put out like that? The insurance company says, bye. We're leaving your state because there's 49 other normal states or 56 if you're Barack Obama. And they go sell there instead, right? That's why there's a YouTube video of a business owner in California, practically in tears in a healthcare town hall saying, why do I have 6 companies to choose from? Why? There's 1,300 companies. Why do I only have 6? Because they put on all of these things that are not medically necessary, which drives up the cost of health insurance. Which is what I fear the most about what happened in the U.S. Supreme Court. Remember that that was our safety net. Unfortunately, we had 4 left-wing nut jobs. Now, when I say left-wing nut jobs, I know it sounds harsh when I refer to liberals as left-wing nut jobs. Let me just give you an example. Elaine Kagan, one of the president's appointees, I call her Mall Cop. This is a direct quote from open court testimony in the U.S. Supreme Court. Ready? Just think about this. Why do the states have a problem with Obamacare when they're getting a bucket of free money from the federal government? Hello, dummy. Where is that money coming from? It comes from the taxpayers. It's not free. That's a quote from a sitting Supreme Court justice. So 4 of them voted for it. 4 conservatives and a pseudo-conservative Kennedy voted against it. Guess who let us down? The Supreme Court Chief Justice, John Roberts. He created what I'm calling, because he didn't give it a name, you see, you will not find the power that John Roberts created all by himself in Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution, the enumerated powers. In fact, he doesn't even name this tax. It's not an excise tax. It's not an income tax. It's not a capital gains tax. It is the tax for doing nothing. So I call it the Roberts tax. Here's how the Roberts tax works. You walk into a grocery store, and the clerk asks you if you'd like to buy a pack of gum. You politely decline, and then he charges you the $2.50 Roberts tax. It's the tax for noncompliance. And it is going to hit Americans right square in their wallets. If you are an employer who makes the mistake of having 50 full-time employees, and you make the mistake of asking them to contribute more than 2.5% of their annual income to help you pay for ever-rising health insurance costs, they qualify for health insurance in the taxpayer-subsidized Obamacare exchange. That's right. And if they do, you, the employer, get to pay $2,000 per employee. If you refuse to comply at all as an employer, you can pay $3,000 per employee. Now that sounds like a lot. I will tell you that I'm sitting with business owners now that are telling me, if we don't repeal this, I can't wait for January 2014. I can't wait. Because I'll pay $2,000 all day long like Donkey Kong, then pay $15,000 to maintain health insurance. Which brings me back to the 4th line. If you like your plan, you can keep your plan, and no one will take it away from you. Hundreds of thousands and millions of Americans will soon be losing their employer-sponsored health insurance. And if you have a good employer that doesn't want to put you in the Obamacare exchanges, he's going to have to do it to stay competitive. If his competitor is saving $100,000 by only paying $2,000 per employee, because they're all in the exchange, he can't compete. He's going to have to kick you off the plan you have, which is exactly the opposite of what the President promised. 2 last things and I'm done. It's a lot. Hey, it's 24 to pay. By the way, if you're upset about the size of the health care bill, Dr. Barbara Bello, who's running for Senate around the Joliet area, she gave a speech on the day that I gave a speech for Americans for Prosperity, Health Care, and she's fighting. So she stood on the health care bill so she could get over the podium. Those were the lies told before the legislation passed. I'm going to tell you the lie they're using. The lie is being repeated over and over again by people like Debbie was-a-man Sergeant Schultz, who is a professional liar. In fact, our friends on the left, of which I have none, they love to put commercials together with a good-looking man, looks just like Paul Ryan, got the widow's peak and everything. And what's he doing? He's pushing grandma in a wheelchair right off the cliff. Democrats, even classic, right? The reality is the person pushing grandma over the cliff looks a lot more like Albert E. Newman with a good tan. Because it's Barack Obama that has ended Medicare as we know it. He is the only president in U.S. history that has cut $716 billion from Medicare. And it should upset every senior in this room. Because what did he cut it for? He cut it to give a new entitlement to people who've never paid into Medicare. A new entitlement, the largest entitlement in U.S. history, to people who have never paid into Medicare. And he cut $416 billion just in reimbursements to doctors, hospitals, and home health care clinics. Why is that troubling? Because before Obamacare passed in 2009, Mayo Clinic just said, hey, we're done with Medicare. We're not getting paid. We're no longer taking Medicare. And it wasn't just Mayo Clinic. A lot more happened. This is before Obamacare. Now, he cut $416 billion in reimbursements, and then he decided to destroy one of the most popular Medicare plans in the United States, Medicare Advantage. See, $136 billion of the $716 billion he cut was the destruction and decimation of the most popular Medicare plan in the United States, Medicare Advantage. People like Part C, which is what Medicare Advantage is called, because it includes Part D, and it pays the doctors more, which means you get better care. President Barack Obama says doctors make too much money in Medicare Advantage. So, under the health care law, as of October 2012, Medicare Advantage was scheduled to be decimated. Decimated. What happens right after October 2012? The elections. You see? So another executive order without approval of Congress. President Barack Obama just took $8 billion from an Obamacare research fund. As remember, he and Beth Pelosi put $105 billion in auto-funding Obamacare money that can't be turned over for an act of Congress. Remember? He took $8 billion of that, offset the decimation of Medicare Advantage until after the November election. How many people in this room even knew that? 1, 2. You do it. Right? That's it. This president is a rogue president who will do anything to get reelected, including betray all of these senior citizens. Now, is Paul Ryan and Mitt Romney really destroying Medicare? Is that what's really happening? I want you to know something. If you go to C.StevenTucker.wordpress.com, we'll have a breakdown between what the two gentlemen's plans are for Medicare, Barack Obama's and Paul Ryan's. Paul Ryan's plan was devised on a bipartisan basis with a man named Ron Wyden. Ron Wyden is the left of Pelosi, as liberal as you can get from the state of Oregon. Ryan and Wyden came together and devised the Medicare reform plan. It is not the Ryan Rivlin plan. And any Democrat who says Paul Ryan is using vouchers is either ignorant or a liar, because there are no vouchers in Paul Ryan's plan. And if you hate Paul Ryan's plan but love Obamacare, you're a hypocrite. Because both plans, one of the core features is government-run, taxpayer-subsidized health insurance exchanges. You see, the 2012 CMS report came out, and the Medicare Actuary report, and they stated a shocking number, the number 2016. Medicare will be bankrupt by the year 2016, which is 4 years from today. Now, Barack Obama likes to say that his health care law extends Medicare until 2023. Yay! Yay! How does he do that? He did that by cutting reimbursement ratios to doctors, hospitals, and home health care clinics, which means they'll make less, which means less of them will see you. You understand? So, another thing they'll say on the left is, by the way, this is what Ryan does. By introducing competition into the Medicare arena for the first time in U.S. history, government-run, government-subsidized health insurance exchanges will be available to anyone under the age of 55 today when they turn 65. They will also have the option of traditional Medicare. No one is taking traditional Medicare away from today's seniors or seniors under the age of 55. No one. Okay? When you turn 65 under Paul Ryan and Ron Wyden's bipartisan plan, you will have the option to keep traditional Medicare if it's still around, or you can purchase health insurance in the government-run exchanges. And there will be health insurers all over the nation competing for your business. You will be guaranteed the two lowest price plans in the new exchanges, regardless of your income. Guaranteed meaning taxpayer subsidized. If you want to buy up and get a better plan, you can do that. But you're guaranteed the two lowest price plans. And by introducing competition into the Medicare arena for the first time in U.S. history, and by allowing millionaires and billionaires, which in Barack Obama's land is people making more than $250,000. But let's just call them millionaires and billionaires. Millionaires and billionaires can opt out of Medicare for the first time without facing legal ramifications. You see, it's illegal to opt out of Medicare, even if you're Bill Gates. So, Paul Ryan and Ron Wyden allow wealthy people to opt out of traditional Medicare. Do you know how much that's going to save? It's going to save so much that Mitt Romney and Paul Ryan have now committed to restore the $716 billion that was cut from Medicare by Barack Obama. And they will save more than that. So please do not listen to the liars on the left. Please read what they put together. Go to my blog. You have to read it. Just read my comments on it. So that you can take that information and share it with the left, because they are largely ignorant. And sadly, so are a lot of our conservatives. They don't even know what's in it. So don't let another bill pass without us knowing what's in it. Read it. It's nowhere near 2,400 pages. Yes, ma'am. Nostradamus decided to commission John Deere and Caterpillar to come to Washington, D.C. and prove that the president's health care law is going to cost them hundreds of millions of dollars. Because they set out all the stats saying, my God, our actuaries ran the numbers. You're going to kill us here. You got to stop this. So he said, I'm holding a congressional hearing. You're all going to show up, and you're going to prove it to me with this congressional hearing with all the cameras rolling. So John Deere and Caterpillar said, we're not going to D.C. You send the numbers by email. Send it over. So they sent it over to Nostradamus. Guess what happened to the congressional hearing? It was canceled. Because they were right. So Lloyd's of London, one of the most respected actuarial firms in the world, their ears perked up. Hey, if John Deere and Caterpillar are going to take it to shorts that bad, I wonder how many other companies, because this is a national law. So they decided to go out and just interview the top 80 companies in the country. Just to see, hey, who's going to you guys do this? John Deere and Caterpillar. Oh boy. Here's what Lloyd's of London said. Starting in 2013, companies that provide prescription drug benefits for retirees under Medicare can no longer deduct this subsidy from their taxes due to the President's health care overhaul signed into law on March 31, 2010. Since companies had created an asset base on these expected deductions, they will now be taking losses to reflect the fall in the asset's value. Are you ready? Now, even if you're not working, you've got a retirement portfolio. Just think, if it's a well-balanced portfolio, why don't you have one of these companies in your portfolio? You don't have to tell me. Just think. Ready? Walgreens. January 1st, 2013, will take a $44 million loss. Okay? I'm still going. I'm not going to read all 80. Next one. Pfizer. Bob Dole's favorite company. $270 million loss. Starting January 1st, 2013. Let's see, what else we got? Ranger, $11 million. Norfolk Southern, $27 million. Ecolab, $5 million. Caterpillar, $90 million. Pepsi, $40 million. Boeing Jets, $150 million. MetLife, $75 million. PPG Glass, $85 million. United States Steel, $27 million. Verizon Communications, $970 million. Think your cell phone bill's going to go up? I switched to Ingersoll Rand, $41 million. Lockheed Martin, $96 million. John Deere, $129.5 million. AK Steel, $31 million. Honeywell, $13 million. Exelon Energy, $65 million. And the granddaddy of them all, ready? AT&T, $1 billion. Do you think it's possible, just possible, that they might raise the prices for the products that they offer? Do you think it's possible they might lay some people off? Adding to our already historically high unemployment numbers, which are nowhere near 8%, haven't been for years, because the president doesn't include our U6 numbers, which is mean unemployment, which is all the people who stop looking for work. It's actually close to 16%. You think this will help? It'll hurt. I know it'll hurt, because the numbers I just read to you are first quarter losses only. all start hanging yourself from these rafters. I'm going to leave you with some positive things. Number one, because the Supreme Court let us down, it is now up to us to stop Obamacare. I mean, the only way we can stop it is by supporting the vetted candidates at SenateConservatives.com. They've been vetted by people like Mark Levin and Jim DeMint. We must take the Senate to repeal Obamacare. We don't need 60 votes. We need 50 plus 1, which is exactly how they passed it with the reconciliation bill. Only this time, when we use a reconciliation bill, we'll actually be reducing the deficit by $360 billion. So you must support them. If you can walk for them, phone for them, donate to them, whatever you can do. And then lastly, we cannot repeal Obamacare until we